Hi everyone! Quick PSA before we begin. This is future Adele coming to you. This video was going to start, it was supposed to be a history and timelines. It was supposed to be the history and timelines episode of the world building series, and somewhere in there it turned into science and technology. So we are not actually doing history and timelines in this video. It is science and technology. So near the beginning, if I'm mentioning history and timelines, it's because that's what this episode was going to be, but we realized we needed to figure a lot of big things out. There were a lot of issues within the science and technology department, so we had to go back and fix that. So this episode is science and technology. It is world building, that aspect of Project Orion. So if I say history and timelines anywhere near the beginning, just ignore it. We're gonna get that next episode. But yeah, enjoy. Hello my sweet friends, and welcome to Adventures in World Building number 3. In case this is your first video of mine you are watching, or the first video in this little series that I'm doing called Adventures in World Building, I'm basically taking y'all on a 6-part episode journey through world building Project Orion, and each episode we're going to be covering a different aspect of world building. So far we have covered settings and locations, and government and religion, and today we are going to be going over history and timelines, and I'm really excited about this one, and I know I say that in probably each one, but this one I have made a little spreadsheet, and we're going to fill it out like an actual historical timeline and really try to give Northrim and the world of Project Orion some background, some depth, and really make it feel like a real world. So I'm gonna do what I did for the last Adventures in World Building episodes, which is at the beginning I just read everything that I have written down for today's to-do list, or this episode's to-do list, and then we're gonna go through later and explain each one and work through each aspect. So for today's episode, History and Timelines, we only have 3 points, and they are list of big events, fill out timeline, and how did certain events affect other events. So we're really just making a history for this world and putting together a timeline and just kind of connecting the dots. So this is the little spreadsheet I have so far for the history. It's not really filled out, it's just like the major events that I know. Specifically, this kind of just follows the monarchy and like the leaders and stuff like that. But yeah, this is all I have, so I'm just gonna work on fleshing this out more. Hello, good morning. It's the next day. I'm talking quietly because Gavin is asleep, and I'm actually about to go wake him up because we have to be somewhere soon, because hopefully we're getting my camera fixed. But I was laying in bed this morning after I woke up. I was just chilling on my phone, and I just had an idea for Project Orion in regards to the history, and it was sort of a big deal. And so I have Scrivener open and I need to write it all out, but I need to go wake Gavin up because we're running late. But I need to just like jot down a few sentences because I just got a huge idea that may completely change a lot of what I was thinking already and what I already had planned for the plot. So I'm just gonna write this down and we're gonna come back to it later. I got a camera. Finally, we fixed the camera situation. It's a different one from what it was before, but I've charged the battery. I'm just very excited about it. So we're gonna charge the battery, and then we're gonna get back to the vlog. Hi everyone. We got the camera fixed. Well, technically it's a different camera, but we are back in business. Camera's good. Hopefully the quality is not bad like it was. So we're gonna get back into this. History and timelines is what we're gonna be working on. So like I was saying earlier this morning, I randomly got this idea, this spark of inspiration, and so I wrote it down, and I wrote actually quite a lot. I'm actually gonna count how many words that is because it's a lot more than a few sentences. Alright, so it was 453 words. So, I mean, that's pretty good. I'm gonna set this down because I forgot how heavy cameras are. So the idea I had this morning was basically changing the, I mentioned this before in one of the other Adventures in World Building episodes. There's a resource called Aldurium, and it is what most of the stuff is powered by. God, I don't know why that was so hard for me to get out. It's the biggest source of power and energy. And basically, it also has to deal with, there's like these two warring factions. One is called the Order of the First Spark, and they believe that steam power is the best. And then the other one, which doesn't have a name, which basically means that it's like their God-given right to advance science. So the idea that I had was actually, what if steam was still superior instead of them using Aldurium for the past 100 years or whatever. Aldurium is still relatively new when the book starts. It's only maybe a few years old, or, you know, it's only been a few years since they found all its, you know, untapped power. And I was trying to think of what I wanted to do. And then instead of the OFS being like an existing group that Caius takes advantage of to get followers, he actually creates OFS himself and says, like, we can't let Aldurium become the #1 resource because steam is the best. Also, something to do with this, someone messaged me on Instagram and said I could relate that sort of to like the Big Bang, or because I was talking about how I needed more of a religious aspect of it, and I 100% agree. So I'm gonna find out how to incorporate that somehow. But it sounded so cool because I also wanted to make the story more steampunk. I wanted to incorporate more steampunk elements because it was supposed to be steampunk, and I kind of deviated from it a little bit when I introduced Aldurium, which is a whole different resource that everything's powered by. So I wanted to make it like newer. I don't know what I want. Dang, this episode is supposed to be history and timelines, not science and technology, which is next week. So what I'm gonna do right now, because I don't quite know what I'm doing, is sit here and just brainstorm. I think I'm gonna set a timer, maybe do a sprint over on the Discord server, and just sit here and try to brainstorm and figure out this issue, figure out what I want to do, work through this problem, and find a solution, hopefully. So it is now a few hours later. It's 8:30 right now, and I was doing some brainstorming, trying to figure out the whole situation with the history and Aldurium and how I want to go about doing that. I took 2 separate walks today to do some brainstorming, and I actually feel like I got a lot done, and I haven't written much. I have done a lot of brainstorming, both like in my head and writing down, but I have a lot in my head and I need to get it all out. The thing is, this episode was supposed to be history and timelines, and through thinking of the history and realizing that I needed to do more research for Aldurium and make sure that all made sense and like actually fit and was solid before I could move on to the history, I don't have that, so I need to do that. And I've started to think a lot more about the science and technology aspect, which was actually supposed to be the next episode of this series, but I think I'm going to go ahead and change this episode from history and timelines to science and technology, because I've been thinking a lot about it and things are finally like clicking into place. And while I do know a lot of this stuff, it's still, there's a lot that's unknown and I need to figure it out, and so much of it is tied to the history. So basically we are going to forget everything that I talked about before that had to do with history and timelines, because I think we're gonna move that to the next video. And it's okay, it's okay. We're gonna work on science and technology right now. I've already done, like, I found myself doing a bunch of research on STEAM stuff and just more technology related things, and I'm getting a lot more into that right now. And I need to get all this figured out first before we do the history. I kind of thought I could do it the other way around, but I'm realizing now that there's a lot more that I need to figure out, but it's okay, it's okay. Sometimes you have to make sure the bigger picture is solid before you could go in and do the details. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I kind of thought that the history and timeline part of it would be the solid foundation, then I could work into the other things. But I am now realizing, at least for this story, it is the other way around. And because the science and technology make up such a big part of this, it is such a big part of the foundation of the story, that I really can't move forward with the history without first knowing about the science and the technology that they use and that made up the history. I do, however, think I figured out the stuff from earlier that I was talking about with the order of the first spark and the time of that and how everything falls into place. I guess I will not go into too much detail in this video because that is going to be the next episode now. But I think I'm going to change it from what it was to the random idea that I had this morning, which I did not know if there was going to be much substance there, but I have been going through and brainstorming, bouncing ideas off of Gavin. He helps a lot with this. And I think I'm gonna go with a new idea, and it's gonna be basically steam power is the basic one, and instead of Aldurium being found and incorporated into daily life like 100 years ago or whatever, Aldurium is gonna be this super new thing that maybe was only discovered like 5 years before the book started. So it's this really big new thing that really hasn't taken over much yet, and I think that's going to help with incorporating more steampunk elements into the story, which is what I really wanted. And I also think it's going to be a good way to incorporate Aldurium more into the plot, which, like I said, it becomes a big deal in book 2 and 3, but it's in the previous drafts I've written of this book, it's not as big as I want it to be. So I'm basically adding a whole new plot line, which is kind of scary, but at the same time, I feel like this is it. And I don't know how to explain it. I felt like there was something missing from Project Orion. I wasn't sure what it was, and I felt like I was trying to add different plot lines. I knew I was heading in the right direction, and I wanted to explore Aldurium more, but I think I figured it out. I think this is it. I think I know exactly, in my head I can see it really well. So I'm just gonna push forward with this and make it work. And it also better explains Caius's motivation, and so I'm gonna have to actually go in there and change that from what it was. It's still roughly the same, it just kind of, I feel like it adds more depth to his motive and the motive of some of the characters in the story. So I will have to go through and change that, but for right now, since this is now science and technology, I'm going to read our to-do list for this episode. All right, 1, steam power, Aldurium, transit, vehicles, and education. And I put education in the science and technology field because with Northrim, but specifically New Vox is like the hub of all the new science and technology stuff, and they've kind of, well, now I don't know because I've changed things. They did like a 180 since steam power was like the baseline, and then they discovered Aldurium, but now I'm changing it, so we'll see. But with the education, it was supposed to be, there was this big push towards science-related fields. Okay, dang it, now hold on, that's changing everything now, because if I'm changing the Aldurium thing, because the original history was Aldurium being discovered like 100 years ago, and the New Vox completely transforming into this hub, like turning their back on steam power and realizing like we're gonna improve science, we're gonna do super science, like education pushes science careers super hard. But now I've changed it. So we're gonna have to think about that. We're gonna have to reevaluate some things. Okay, all right, well, first I wanna work on transit and vehicles because I feel like that would be the easiest, or at least what I have the most information on. What I'm gonna do to start that process is actually go on Pinterest. I've been looking at Pinterest a lot today, the past few hours, because I've been getting so much more into like the science and technology aspect of the story, which is why we're now shifting to this. So I'm gonna go on Pinterest. We are gonna just start getting some inspiration, look at some pictures, look at some concept art, and I haven't quite decided how I'm going to organize everything. I did at one point create a spreadsheet. I was gonna make this big master spreadsheet for vehicles, and then I also had another one for weapons, almost like a video game guide. You know, you have the weapons and like all the stats and everything like that, but I feel like that's too much work and information I probably don't really need. It is really cool for world building, but like I don't know if they're gonna actually like need to know the stats of their weapons in the story. But I may do something like that with a spreadsheet and just have everything there, but we'll see. I may just also do it in Scrivener, I don't know. Good morning, everyone. It is the next day. I'm eating some yogurt with a lot of granola. I woke up early, did a little workout, took a walk. Right now it is 8 a.m. or it's probably closer to 9 a.m. now, but I woke up, I did a little workout, took a walk. I know I took 2 separate walks yesterday, but I woke up this morning and it was 60 degrees. It was cold outside. And so I had to take a walk because I don't know how to act with the weather not nice. It won't make me act up. So I took a walk and it was very nice. But I am so excited to world build today, and I haven't felt this exact feeling in a while. I woke up this morning before my alarm went off, and my first thought was just how excited I am to get back to this world. I have a lot of ideas. I'm trying to get my thoughts down in an organized way, but last night I worked on the vehicles and the public transport. These Oreos giving me away, trying to eat my healthy yogurt. So last night I worked on the transit, and so I separated it into like public transportation and then like private transportation. So for example, there's like big commercial airships, because airships are like a core component of the story because I love it so much. So there's like the big commercial airships, and you know, ones for city transportation. There's also the Sky Rail, which they use briefly near the beginning, which is such a cool idea, and I really want to expand more on that. It's basically just like a cable car on the sky in the, you know, those things. And then like trolleys or trams. I want to be able to find a cool name for them, but you know, just like on the track through the city, that kind of thing. And then private, you know, not everyone, but there's smaller airships, and also speeder bikes, which is what Luca uses. And I didn't come up with anything else for private transportation because I do want public transportation to be like a big part of like living in the city. But I did do more research on how they're powered, and like gas and steam, since we are kind of shifting our focus now to incorporating a lot more of those elements instead of depending on the Aldurium, because the Aldurium is going to be like this new thing. So we're going to come over here and open our computer. Okay, so transit and vehicles, we kind of already did those. And then left is steam power, Aldurium, and education. And I am going to have to figure out the like education part that I was talking about last night because now it's different. Okay, so next I do think I'm going to work on education. I'm gonna sit here and brainstorm and see how I can fit it in with the current existing history, I guess, or just background of the city, because I don't want to get rid of everything, but we're gonna make it work. We're gonna find a way to make it work. So education, here we go. All right, so education is done. It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I just kind of changed some things around with the beliefs. But then I'm moving on to the last 2 things, which is just steam power and Aldurium, and getting those to mesh and figure out the relationship between them. And now that I've kind of changed a lot, reworking things, and it's going really well, and I'm coming up with a lot of information, just new stuff that I haven't thought of, and making everything fit, and it's actually going really well. And I think I just had an idea. I was kind of struggling for a few minutes with Orion's dad. There's a whole plot line with him, and it sort of relates to Aldurium, and I don't want to give too much away, but you know, like I've said, it gets a lot bigger in the second and third books. But I think I was struggling with kind of incorporating this storyline into now this big storyline that I'm creating, because this new one that I'm creating with the Aldurium being new, this is now this overarching plot line that's going to be over all 3 books, and this is what I've been looking for. I feel like this is finally it. This is exactly what I was going for, but with Aldurium being an old thing that was already existing, I couldn't figure out how to make Aldurium important. But now that I'm changing it to where it is new, it feels like everything's falling into place, and I've figured out a way to incorporate the dad's storyline and his background into this stuff, and in the existing background I have for him, incorporate it into the new stuff. Some of it is a little intimidating at times because I have to research steam power and stuff like that, and I do feel like I know a lot, but like things come up and I have to look things up, and it's like I have to know science, because now, you know, this technology or the source of power is now becoming a much more central thing to the plot, and I want it to be accurate, and I want to know these things and actually talk about it instead of planning it in my head and then maybe mentioning it here and there in the draft and then hoping the reader just kind of gets what I'm saying. This is now, you know, it's becoming a much bigger part of the story. So this whole thing is basically just learning as we go. This is a learning experience for both of us. There's no set routine. You just kind of figure things out. As you're working on something, you may learn something new about your story in this aspect. And like I was talking about last night, you have to make sure the bigger picture is solid before you can work on the details, or else everything's going to change and it's going to start to fall apart. And that's kind of what was happening with the world building and backstory and history of this world. And it was just not as strong as it could be, which is why I think this past draft wasn't as strong or as good as I thought it was. But now that I'm examining the foundations that I had laid for this story, I'm realizing there were a lot of cracks, and at least for this story, that worked its way up into the story, the plot, the characters. It doesn't just affect the world building, it affects the whole story. So honestly, with these last 2 bullet points of just Aldurium and steam power and how they relate and connect, it's just a lot of brainstorming, talking to myself. I'm doing a lot of pacing, just talking to myself out loud and coming back and writing things down, just trying to get everything out of my brain. And then once I can write it down and read it, you know, then more questions start to come up, and then I can answer those questions. And so it's just a lot of working through things, talking to myself, and trying to make everything connect. So I've been working a lot with the steam power and Aldurium thing, this whole situation, and it's probably been like 2 hours now, and I'm getting so much done, and I'm so excited because I feel like some things are finally falling into place, and obviously there's some things I have to just make sure everything fits. I mean, I know I've been saying that, but that's basically all it is. And with some of it, I do think that it will be clearer for me. I'm gonna have to go back through and reread draft 2, so that's gonna be a whole nother vlog, is like rereading draft 2 and getting ready for revisions and stuff like that. So I think I will get some things answered once I go back, and because there's a few things and scenes that I can remember, but I don't remember exactly what I had written. But yeah, right now I'm just working on connecting everything, and I keep saying that, and it's not always gonna be a fast process, because with brainstorming and stuff like that, it usually takes a while. So I'm going to end this vlog here because we have done everything else on our to-do list for science and technology, and I know this video is supposed to start as history and timelines, and that's what I thought it was going to be. I was excited for history and timelines, but again, we realized the foundation was not as strong as it should have been to then go into the history part. So yeah, next episode is going to be history and timelines, and we are actually going to make sure that it is history and timelines and everything else is figured out before we jump into that. Alright, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helped you in some way. Comment down below how you do your world building, especially with science and technology, and how you come up with your ideas for tech and stuff like that, but also magic, because my story doesn't have a magic system, but I know that's a big part of fantasy stories. So comment down below how you come up with those ideas for that. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'm gonna see y'all in the next video.